Market rates, Jonathan said, not even looking up from my salary adjustment request. Just 2 words, but they hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything I'd done for this company, these new graduates bring fresh perspectives, contemporary skills, he continued, finally glancing up. They've been trained on systems you've had to learn on the job. Fresh perspectives, that's what he called it. But here's what really got me. These kids were making 50% more than me. 50%. And I'd been there 7 years. My name is Anthony Caldwell, I'm 47 years old, and until that Friday afternoon meeting, I thought I was one of Jonathan Whitfield's most trusted employees at TechFlow Dynamics. Let me back up a bit. I started at this place when I was 40, employee number 8. Jonathan's fintech startup was just getting off the ground, and honestly, it felt like joining a family. The whole team was cramped into this tiny office space, working crazy hours, but we believed in what we were building. Now, 7 years later, we've got 180 people across 2 offices. Not bad for a company that started with 8 guys and a dream, right? I'd been through everything with Jonathan. When we couldn't make payroll that second year and he asked us to take a 50% pay cut for 2 months, I said yes without hesitation. When our biggest client threatened to walk because our software had bugs, I spent 4 straight days rewriting code to save the deal. When Jonathan's father passed away, I basically ran both our departments for 3 weeks so he could handle family stuff. During those early days, Jonathan used to say, "We're all in this together. When we make it, we all make it." I believed him. Maybe I was naive, but I really thought he meant it. The company started making money, first million, then 10 million. Jonathan bought himself a Porsche, then a lake house. Me? I got my standard 2% raise every year. After 7 years, my salary had gone up exactly 14.9%. The company's revenue had gone up about 2,000%. But I kept telling myself it would pay off eventually. Jonathan always said soon when I asked about promotions, next quarter when I brought up market rates, after this project when I mentioned that other companies were paying senior engineers a lot more. Then last week, something happened that changed everything. Our payroll system had a glitch. Nothing major, just a temporary access issue that let some people see compensation data they normally wouldn't. I wasn't trying to snoop. I was just checking my own pay stub when I noticed the salary breakdown for our new hire cohort. The numbers made me sick to my stomach. These fresh college graduates, kids with 0 real-world experience, were starting at $85,000. I was making $57,000. They were making nearly 50% more than me on day 1, and I'd been building this company for 7 years. I couldn't stop staring at those numbers. How is this even possible? That's when I started digging a little deeper into my old emails, looking for clues about how we got to this point. And buried in my inbox from 3 years ago, I found something that made my blood boil. It was an email chain between Jonathan and Stephen Walsh, our CFO. The subject line was Anthony Caldwell, compensation review. Jonathan had written, "Keep Anthony at current level. He's too valuable in his position to promote, and he's unlikely to leave. He's emotionally invested in our story, and the sunk cost is too high for him to walk away. Standard 2% annual adjustment only." Stephen's reply, "Agreed. Same strategy for Martinez, Thompson, and the other early hires. They're locked in psychologically." Locked in psychologically. They were deliberately keeping me underpaid because they thought I wouldn't have the guts to leave. I sat there in my cubicle reading that email over and over, all those times I'd asked for raises, all those promises about next quarter and after this project. It was all calculated. They knew exactly what they were doing. The worst part? They were right. I had been emotionally invested. I had bought into the whole family narrative. I'd turned down 2 job offers in the past 3 years because I believed in what we were building together. But reading that email, I realized I wasn't building anything together with these people. I was just another line item in their cost management strategy. I spent the rest of the day acting normal, but inside I was planning. If they thought I was locked in psychologically, they were about to learn how wrong they were. That night, I called my buddy Patrick Henley. He's our IT manager, been there almost as long as me. We'd worked together on a major system upgrade a couple years back when his assistant quit, and we'd become pretty good friends. "Patrick, I need to ask you something, and I need you to hear me out before you say no." "Sounds serious. What's going on?" I told him about the payroll glitch, the salary numbers, the email I'd found. His reaction was immediate. "Are you kidding me? They're doing this on purpose? That's what I want to find out. I think it's bigger than just me. Can you help me get the full compensation data for everyone who's been here more than 2 years compared to new hires? There was a long pause. Tony, that's against company policy. Could get us both fired. What they're doing might be illegal. Age discrimination, maybe wage theft. I need to know how bad it is. Another pause. Meet me at Murphy's bar tonight. 8 p.m. We need to talk about this in person. Murphy's is this dive bar about 20 minutes from the office, the kind of place where nobody from TechFlow would ever go. When I got there, Patrick was already nursing a beer in a corner booth. You sure about this? He asked as I sat down. I showed him the email on my phone, watched his face change as he read it. Holy crap, this is really messed up. He finished his beer in one long gulp. Look, I can't give you direct access to the database, but sometimes I run audit reports for compliance purposes. Sometimes those reports sit in a shared folder for a few hours before I move them to the secure server. I got what he was saying. When might you run your next audit? Maybe Sunday night. Maybe I'll forget to move the file until Monday morning. Sunday night, I barely slept. Monday morning at 6 a.m., I found Patrick's audit report in the shared folder. What I saw made me realize this was way worse than I'd imagined. The data was damning. Every single employee who'd been with the company more than 3 years was making significantly less than market rate. The gap averaged 35% below what they should have been earning. Meanwhile, new hires were coming in at or above market rates. But that wasn't even the worst part. There were more emails in the file. Internal communications between Jonathan and the executive team where they actually had a name for what they were doing. Retention cost management strategy. They'd identified employees with high company loyalty indicators, people like me who'd been there from the early days, who'd made sacrifices, who believed in the mission. Then they deliberately kept our pay low, betting that we were too invested to leave. They had turned our loyalty into a weapon against us. As I sat there at my kitchen table at 6:30 in the morning, looking at all this evidence, I knew I had two choices. I could find another job, quietly leave, and pretend none of this ever happened. Or I could do something about it. I'd always been the loyal employee, the team player, the guy who never rocked the boat. But that was about to change. Monday morning, I walked into the office like nothing had happened. But everything was different now. I knew what they were doing. I had proof. The hardest part was acting normal around Jonathan. When he walked by my desk and said, "Morning, Tony," with that same friendly smile, I had to force myself to smile back. This guy had been screwing me over for years, and he acted like we were still buddies. I spent the morning going through the data Patrick had gotten me. The more I dug into it, the angrier I got. It wasn't just me getting the shaft. There were 23 other long-term employees in the same boat. People who'd given years of their lives to this company, only to watch new college kids walk in making more money on day one. Take Christina Martinez, for example. She'd been our lead developer for 5 years. Brilliant programmer, knew our entire system inside and out. She was making $62,000. The kid we hired last month to work under her? $78,000. That's a 26% gap for someone with a fraction of her experience. Or Daniel Thompson in product management. 6 years with the company, helped design half our core features. His salary was $71,000. The new product manager we brought in from Google was starting at $95,000. Same role, same responsibilities, but 34% more money because he was fresh talent. The pattern was everywhere. If you'd been loyal to TechFlow, if you'd stuck around through the tough times, you were being punished for it financially. But here's what really got me fired up. I found emails showing that Jonathan and Steven knew exactly what the market rates were. They had salary surveys, compensation studies, the whole 9 yards. They knew they were underpaying us. They just didn't care. In one email from last year, Steven had written, "Our retention costs are 23% below industry average. The loyalty factor is working exactly as predicted." Loyalty factor. Like we were lab rats in some experiment. I made copies of everything, saved it all to a personal drive, emailed it to my personal account, even printed out hard copies. If I was going to do something about this, I needed to be prepared. Tuesday, I started reaching out to a few people. Not the whole group yet, just a couple of guys I trusted. I started with Daniel since his name was all over the emails. "Hey, can we grab coffee after work? I want to run something by you." We met at this little cafe a few blocks away. I showed him the compensation data, his own salary compared to the new hire. His face went white. You've got to be kidding me. I wish I was. Look at this. I pulled up the emails about retention cost management. Daniel stared at his phone screen for a long time. So they've been lying to us for years, pretty much. Question is, what do we want to do about it? What can we do? It's not like we can force them to give us raises. Maybe we can, if we do this right. I explained my thinking. We had evidence of systematic wage suppression. We had proof they were deliberately targeting loyal employees. In some states, this could be considered fraud or breach of good faith. Even if it wasn't technically illegal, it was definitely unethical, and the bad publicity alone could hurt them. You're talking about going nuclear, Daniel said. I'm talking about getting what we deserve. Wednesday, I had lunch with Christina. Same conversation, same shocked reaction, but Christina had a different perspective. Tony, I've been thinking about leaving anyway. The new guy makes more than me and I'm supposed to train him? It's insulting. That's exactly why we need to stick together on this. If we all just quietly leave, nothing changes. They'll just keep doing this to the next group of people. She nodded slowly. What's your plan? I'd been working on that. The way I saw it, we had 3 options. Option 1, go to HR and file a complaint. But HR worked for Jonathan, so that was probably a dead end. Option 2, get lawyers involved, file a lawsuit. That could work, but it would take years and cost a fortune. Option 3, handle it ourselves. What do you mean, handle it ourselves? I mean, we confront Jonathan directly, show him what we know, and give him a chance to fix it. If he refuses, then we make the information public. Public how? Company-wide email. Let everyone know what's really going on. Christina whistled low. That would definitely get his attention. The question is, would it get results? Thursday, I brought Daniel and Christina together for a longer conversation. We went through all the data, all the evidence. By the end of the meeting, we'd identified 15 other people who were definitely being underpaid and probably another 8 who might be. So we're talking about maybe 20 people total, Daniel said. 20 people who've been getting screwed for years while watching new hires make more money, I corrected. We decided to reach out to a few more people, very quietly. By Friday, we had 8 people who knew what was going on. All of them were angry. Most of them were ready to do something about it. But I knew that if we were going to make this work, I needed to be the one to take the lead. I was the one who'd found the evidence. I was the one with the least to lose. At 47, with my daughter already out of college, I could afford to take some risks. Friday afternoon, I made my decision. I was going to request that meeting with Jonathan. I was going to ask for a raise to market rate. And when he inevitably said no, I was going to show him exactly what I knew. But first, I needed to prepare. If I was going to walk into Jonathan's office and basically threaten him, I needed to have my ducks in a row. Saturday morning, I drafted 2 documents. The first was a comprehensive report showing the pay disparities with names, numbers, and percentages. The second was a proposed solution, immediate raises to bring everyone up to market rate plus back pay to compensate for years of underpayment. I ran the numbers. Bringing all 23 long-term employees up to market rate would cost the company about $680,000 in immediate adjustments, plus maybe another $400,000 in back pay. Sounds like a lot, but for a company pulling in over $15 million a year, it was totally doable. It would cut into executive bonuses for maybe 2 quarters. Sunday, I wrote my resignation letter, just in case. If Jonathan called my bluff and told me to walk, I wanted to be ready. But I also prepared something else. A company-wide email explaining everything. Names, numbers, evidence, the whole story about how loyal employees were being systematically exploited. I wasn't planning to send it. It was insurance. A way to make sure Jonathan understood that I wasn't just some disgruntled employee making empty threats. Sunday night, I barely slept. Monday morning, I was going to walk into Jonathan's office and change everything. One way or another, the lies were going to stop. I just hoped I had the guts to see it through. Monday morning came faster than I wanted. I got to the office early, around 7 a.m., and sent Jonathan a meeting request for 2 p.m. Salary review discussion was all I put in the subject line. He accepted within 10 minutes. Probably figured it would be the same conversation we'd had a dozen times before. Me asking for a raise, him giving me some excuse about budgets and timing. He had no idea what was coming. I spent the morning acting normal, but my heart was pounding. Every time someone walked by my desk, I felt like they could tell I was planning something. Christina caught my eye around lunch and gave me a little nod. Daniel did the same thing. They knew today was the day. At 2 p.m. sharp, I walked into Jonathan's corner office. Same setup as always. His huge desk, expensive chair, windows overlooking downtown. The power dynamic was built right into the furniture. "Tony! Good to see you. How's the Henderson project coming along?" Small talk, like we were old friends. I sat down across from him and pulled out my folder. "Henderson's fine. I wanted to talk about my compensation." His expression shifted slightly. "Here we go again," you could see him thinking. Sure. I know it's been a while since your last review. The thing is, with the current market conditions," I interrupted him. "Jonathan, I know about the retention cost management strategy." He stopped mid-sentence, just stared at me for a second. "I'm not sure what you mean." I pulled out the printed email and placed it on his desk, the one where he'd written about keeping me locked in psychologically. The color drained from his face as he read it. "Where did you get this?" "Doesn't matter. What matters is, I know what you've been doing, not just to me, but to Christina, Daniel, and about 20 other people who've been loyal to this company." He picked up the email, read it again. I could see his mind racing, trying to figure out how bad this was. "Tony, you have to understand, business is complicated. We have to balance compensation with other factors." "Cut the garbage, Jonathan. You deliberately kept my salary low because you thought I wouldn't leave. You bet on my loyalty and used it against me." I pulled out the compensation analysis and dropped it on his desk. All the numbers, all the comparisons, everything laid out in black and white. New hires are making 50% more than me, 35% more than Christina. These aren't market conditions, this is deliberate wage suppression. Jonathan flipped through the pages, his jaw getting tighter with each one. "This is confidential company information. You had no right to access this, and you had no right to lie to me for 7 years. We stared at each other across his desk. This wasn't how our conversations usually went. Usually I was the one asking for favors, hoping for crumbs. Today was different. "What do you want, Tony?" "I want you to fix it. Market rate adjustments for everyone who's been underpaid. Back pay to make up for the years you've been shorting us. And a transparent compensation policy so this never happens again." He laughed. Actually laughed. "You're talking about over $1 million. That's not happening." "Then I guess we have a problem." I pulled out my phone and showed him the draft email I'd prepared. The one addressed to everyone in the company. "This goes out in 24 hours unless we reach an agreement." His eyes went wide as he read the subject line. "The truth about TechFlow's compensation practices. You're threatening me? I'm giving you a chance to do the right thing before this becomes public." Jonathan stood up, started pacing behind his desk. "This is extortion, Tony. You could go to jail for this." "No, extortion would be if I was asking for money for myself. I'm asking you to pay people what they're worth. Big difference." He sat back down, rubbed his face with both hands. "Even if I wanted to do this, the board would never approve it. The board's going to have bigger problems if this story hits social media. Tech company exploits loyal employees while CEO buys lake house. That's not great PR." We sat in silence for maybe 30 seconds. I could practically see the calculations running in his head. Cost of fixing the problem versus cost of the bad publicity. "I need time to think about this. You have until 5 p.m. tomorrow. After that, the email goes out automatically." That was a lie. I'd have to send it manually. But he didn't know that. And if I say no, if I tell you to just quit, then everyone in this company is going to know exactly how you've been treating the people who built this place, and I'm guessing a lot of them are going to be pretty angry about it. Jonathan looked at the papers scattered across his desk, then back at me. "I can't believe you're doing this. After everything we've been through." "After everything we've been through?" "Jonathan, you've been stealing from me for 7 years. Don't talk to me about loyalty." I stood up to leave. "One more thing. Christina, Daniel, and about 6 other people know what's going on. So if you're thinking about firing me or trying to cover this up, it's not going to work." His face went pale again. "How many people have you told?" "Enough. The cat's out of the bag, Jonathan. You can either fix this quietly, or we can make it very public. Your choice." I walked out of his office and closed the door behind me. My hands were shaking, but I felt incredible. 7 years of being told no, 7 years of being made to feel like I should be grateful for scraps. That was over. Back at my desk, I sent a quick text to our group. It's done. He has until tomorrow at 5. Christina texted back. How'd he take it? Not well, but he knows we're serious. The rest of the afternoon was weird. Jonathan didn't come out of his office. I saw Stephen Walsh hurry in there around 3:30 and stay for an hour. Then I saw them both on a conference call that went until almost 6 p.m. People were starting to notice something was up. A couple of coworkers asked if everything was okay, why the executives were having all these closed-door meetings. I just told them I'd probably know more tomorrow. Tuesday morning, Jonathan wasn't in the office. His assistant said he was working from home. Stephen Walsh looked like he hadn't slept. Around lunch, I got an email from Jonathan asking me to come in at 2 p.m., same time as yesterday, same office. This time, when I walked in, Stephen was there too, and Jonathan had a folder in front of him that looked suspiciously like the compensation adjustment plan I'd given him. Okay, Jonathan said without looking up. Let's talk. I sat down across from Jonathan and Stephen. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. We've reviewed your proposal, Stephen said, not making eye contact. The numbers are significant. Jonathan finally looked up from the folder. He looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Tony, what you're asking for would cost us about $1.1 million in immediate adjustments and back pay. That's what fair compensation costs, Jonathan. Stephen jumped in. We've run the numbers. We can do the market rate adjustments. That's about $680,000 spread over the affected employees. But the back pay, that's where it gets complicated. Not complicated. Expensive. There's a difference. Jonathan leaned forward. Look, we screwed up, okay? The retention strategy was Stephen's idea, but I signed off on it. We thought we were being smart about cost management, but we never meant to... You never meant to get caught. He didn't argue with that. Here's what we can do, Stephen said, sliding a paper across the desk. Immediate market rate adjustments for all affected employees. Average increase of 38%. That brings everyone up to current industry standards. I looked at the numbers. My salary would go from $57,000 to $84,000. Christina would jump from $62,000 to $89,000. Daniel would go from $71,000 to $98,000. What about back pay? We can't do full back pay, Jonathan said. It would bankrupt us. But we can do partial compensation. Maybe 25% of what we should have been paying over the past 3 years. I did quick math in my head. For me, that would be about $20,000. Not everything they owed me, but better than nothing. When? Salary adjustments effective immediately. Back pay compensation in the next paycheck. And the transparency policy? Stephen nodded. Annual compensation reviews with market data. All salary ranges posted internally. No more secret deals. I sat there for a minute thinking it over. It wasn't everything I'd asked for, but it was real money, real change. And it would help 23 people who'd been getting screwed for years. What about Christina, Daniel, and the others? They get the same deal? Everyone gets the same deal, Jonathan confirmed. And no retaliation? No suddenly finding reasons to fire people who were part of this? No retaliation. You have my word. Your word doesn't mean much anymore, Jonathan. He winced at that, but didn't argue. We'll put it in writing, Stephen said. Legal document, signed and witnessed. I thought about the email sitting in my drafts folder, the one that would blow this whole thing wide open if I sent it. I still could. Even with this deal, I could still expose what they'd been doing. But looking at the numbers on the paper, thinking about Christina getting a $27,000 raise, about Daniel finally getting paid what he was worth, this was real. This was happening right now. Okay, I said. We have a deal. Jonathan actually looked relieved. Thank you, Tony. I know this hasn't been easy. Don't thank me yet. You've got 22 other people to convince that you're serious about this. The rest of that week was wild. Jonathan called individual meetings with every affected employee. Had to explain the new compensation structure, the back pay, everything. Some people were happy. Others were furious that it had taken this long. Christina was one of the happy ones. I can't believe you actually pulled this off, she said when we grabbed coffee Thursday. I was ready to start job hunting. Daniel was more skeptical. This is nice and all, but what's to stop them from pulling the same crap in a few years? That's why we got the transparency policy, I told him. Annual reviews, posted salary ranges, market data. Harder to hide stuff when everything's out in the open. By Friday, word was getting around the office that something big had happened with compensation. People were getting raises, back pay was showing up in accounts. The new hires started asking questions about why everyone was suddenly in such a good mood. Jonathan sent out a company-wide email that Friday afternoon, very carefully worded, talked about inconsistencies in our compensation structure and bringing all employees up to current market standards. No mention of the retention cost management strategy or the deliberate underpaying. Just corporate speak about doing better going forward. I could have sent my email then, could have told everyone the real story about how their loyal colleagues had been systematically exploited. But you know what? The problem was fixed. People were getting paid fairly. Sometimes that's enough. 3 months later, I got a job offer from another company. Senior engineering manager position, $105,000 base salary plus stock options. A 25% bump from my new TechFlow salary. I went to Jonathan's office to give my 2 weeks notice. Can't say I'm surprised, he said when I handed him the letter. Still mad about everything? Honestly, not really. You fixed the problem. People are getting paid fairly now. That's what mattered. Any chance we could match the offer? Keep you around? I thought about it for maybe 2 seconds. No, too much history here. He nodded. I get it. For what it's worth, you taught me something important about how to treat people. Just don't forget the lesson. My last day at TechFlow was weird. 7 years of my life, and I was walking away. But not because I was getting screwed anymore. Because I was ready for something new. Christina threw me a little going away party. Daniel made a speech about how I'd saved everyone's bacon. Even some of the executives showed up, which was awkward but nice. 6 months later, I heard through the grapevine that TechFlow had hired a compensation consultant and completely overhauled their pay structure. Market rates across the board, regular reviews, the works. Apparently the board had gotten wind of what happened and decided they didn't want any more retention cost management strategies. The best part? 3 more. People from our original group got promoted to management positions. Turns out when you pay people fairly, they stick around and do good work. Who knew? These days I'm doing well at my new company. Making good money, working with people who respect experience, no games or manipulation. Just honest work for honest pay. That's really all I ever wanted.